Extreme 3D Iris Acrylic Nail Art Tutorial by Hotpinkzebrapolish.
Hello everyone, in today's video I'm going to be showing you one of my mom's favorite flowers. It's an Extreme 3D Iris. About a year ago I did an Extreme 3D Pansy flower, which is my favorite flower, so I decided to switch it up a little bit this year and do one for my mom. I really love the way that this turned out. It's super delicate and airy looking, and it looks like it's got the ripples just like an actual flower. So I hope you like it as much as I do, and if you missed that Pansy video, I will put a link to it in the description box below, so check for that, and I will see you next time. Bye!
Begin with a gradient of a grass green to a pale yellow to an orchid purple, which sounds like a really crazy gradient because it's not colors that very well blend together, but when it's all on there, it looks so nice. So I started with the green at the cuticle and then the orchid purple at the tip, and then I'm going to go through and just very carefully blend them all together. And then encase the nail with a layer of clear acrylic. The hard part of getting that gradient down is not making a brown between the yellow and the purple, but just a really quick fade. You don't want a long gradient where it slowly goes from one color to the next. You just want a quick, like, oh, yellow to purple. And then we're going to file the nail into shape with the E-file after it's capped with acrylic, with clear. And the clear acrylic is very beneficial with this particular type of a thing because if you were to file into your gradient, if you had it so smooth and perfect looking, it may mess it up a little bit. So make sure your nail is very well covered with clear. So then with a dark purple, I'm going to sculpt the back petal, so one single petal for the back of the flower, and then with my grass green color, so the same color I used up at the cuticle area, I'm going to be adding the stem to my flower. And as you can see, it's not a super pigmented green, so it wasn't like a pop of green, but we'll fix that later. So then on a nail form backing using that same dark purple, I'm going to sculpt two of the final two upper petals of my iris. So an iris has 6 petals, 3 that curl up and 3 that come down. So the 3 that come up are going to be a bit bigger and their proportions are a little bit longer, more of an oval instead of the circle type shape that the bottom ones are. So when you're sculpting those 2 that come up and around, you're going to want them to be, as you can see, almost like a I don't know, a bean shape, like a lima bean kind of. Not exactly like a lima bean. I don't know. You guys figure out what that shape is. A lemon, a squished lemon. No, I could keep going like this and I would go insane. But you're going to you're going to sculpt that shape, whatever you want to call it. And then after it sets up for a little while, so it's almost 100% completely set, you're going to shape them and kind of pull them up and stretch the petals into a very forward type stance so that they're almost standing on one end, and then pull them together. So this is the next stage of your flower. The great thing with working with the acrylic in this particular state is that you don't have a whole heck of a lot of control over it. It kind of is going to do what it's going to do, which in the case of making a flower that's very delicate and very natural, having acrylic that's just got a mind of its own actually helps you. It works to your favor because you're not going to make sure that your flower looks perfect. As you can see, the top of my iris is by no means symmetrical. It's close, but it's not. It's got a very natural feel to it, which is fantastic for sculpting a flower, which is part of the reason why I think flowers are so popular as far as art in general, because there's something so freeing about being able to create something that doesn't have any real strict rules about it. It's not like a face where you want it to be perfectly symmetrical. You have some freedom with it. So then for my lower petals, it's going to be the same basic system of wanting them to be almost completely set up before you pick them up, and then you're going to pick them up and start working with them on the rest of the flower that you're working on, or that you've already started. And as you can see, I'm using the help of a silicone tool, which is something I would definitely recommend. It's a little awkward working with these partially set up petals because the underneath side of them is very sticky and the top of them is not sticky at all, and you want the top to be sticky and you want the bottom to not stick. So it's just kind of a process of working with it, and definitely having 2 tools like a silicone tool, an acrylic brush, or 2 acrylic brushes. Not your fingers though, guys, just don't use your fingers, but any 2 tools is what you're going to want to have on hand. So then you can manipulate those petals a little bit. But like I said before, the great thing about working with acrylic in this particular state is that it does sort of do what it's going to do, and it does give you that option of having a very natural looking flower because you couldn't do it otherwise. And then with yellow acrylic, I'm going to be adding the pollen that's at the base of the lower petals and then gluing that flower over that first one. So that petal that we sculpted behind that's behind the flower, you pretty much can't even see. It just makes it so that you don't see green through the flower, which is what you want because you don't want to be able to see that background color pop through the middle. And then after you've got it all glued into place, this flower is so delicate because all of those little petals are so skinny. You're going to want to carefully fill in the flower with clear acrylic. And you may think that filling it in with the flower will give it more of a solid appearance and it's not quite so delicate, but you can't see the clear acrylic and the feeling of airiness is still there. So now with some acrylic paint in yellow and lavender and white, I'm going to be adding all of my details to my petals. So I started by brightening up the pollen with a little bit of very bright, very banana yellow. And then with the lavender color that I mentioned, I'm going to be adding some little lines coming down from that pollen to give my iris a bit more movement. And when you're working with an iris, just like many other flowers, there's a bunch of different varieties. So you have different color schemes to play around with. And then with white, I'm going to be adding a couple little polka dots right over the top of my lavender lines. And then going back to lavender, I'm going to highlight the edges of those petals. And to do this, you don't want to hold your brush in line with the edge of the petal. You want to hold it perpendicular and run it across in a way you probably would never want to normally use your brush. You may just internally think that it's going to mess up your bristles because you're working against them, but it actually is the best way to just get a little bit of color on the edge of the petals. And then after you're all done with that, I'm going to be applying a layer of gel sealer over the background, curing it, and some matte top coat over my iris, and that's it. If you guys really like these non-traditional flowers, because every time you see a flower video on YouTube, I assume it's going to be roses, and so I like to do something different, I will put a link to the pansy video in the description box below, so check for that, and I will see you next time. Bye!